Number 8. Hertz stolen car scandal. It's rare for a whole corporation to be accused of playing the victim card, but that's exactly what happened in 2022 when hundreds of innocent customers were falsely accused of stealing vehicles from the Hertz rental car company. In a class-action lawsuit, 364 customers described how they were arrested, charged, and sometimes thrown in jail based on these completely inaccurate claims against them. Some of the customers even faced felony charges. One woman from Chicago was pulled over for a suspected seatbelt violation and was thrown in the slammer after being informed by the officer that there was a warrant out for her arrest. She languished behind bars for more than a month while she sorted out the disastrous misunderstanding. A national public radio broadcast described how a mother of two from Florida was accused of stealing her rental car, despite taking the proper steps to extend the rental period several times. She even had text message conversation with Hertz employees confirming the extensions, but regardless, she spent nearly 40 days in jail and ended up missing her nursing school graduation. Another man from Mississippi spent 6 months in jail for allegedly stealing his Hertz rental car after returning the vehicle and paying for it in full. He informed the company of the mistake, but they apparently forgot to tell prosecutors, so when the man didn't show up for his hearing, he was locked up. In addition to facing unjust legal consequences, the accused customers claimed that they lost out on job opportunities and, in some instances, were separated from their children. Many of the customers even faced the trauma of being arrested at gunpoint when they did absolutely nothing wrong. The class action lawsuit accused Hertz employees of losing track of cars, deleting rental extensions, and backdating rental dates to make the vehicle's returns appear overdue. As a result, the rental vehicles were mistakenly reported to the police as stolen. Hertz agreed to pay out $168 million to the 364 plaintiffs named in the lawsuit to make right with the company's false allegations, which upended and severely disrupted people's lives by no fault of their own. Number 7. Michael Rollison. Former Rockland, Maine police officer Michael Rollison was fired in 2021 after he admitted to beating 8 porcupines to death with his baton while on duty. He said that he didn't hate the animals, but that they kept getting into his camping property and were nuisances on the road. Rollison's attorney highlighted his client's past military service and achievements as a police officer in an attempt to mitigate his behavior. And while he managed to avoid any felony convictions, he still ended up losing his job and served a brief jail sentence. Rollison's colleague, Addison Cox, was also fired and criminally charged in connection with the case, and he served a short jail sentence as well. But Rollison's problems didn't end there. In early 2022, an 80-year-old woman named Glennis Lane sued the city of Rockland with allegations that he used excessive force during an arrest 2 years earlier. According to the Bangor Daily News, the incident occurred at an apartment complex where the police came to tow a truck that belonged to Lane's son. When Lane tried to move the vehicle, Rollison allegedly grabbed her and proceeded to batter, manhandle, and otherwise use unnecessary force towards Ms. Lane, causing multiple visual injuries and bruises. For some odd reason, the senior citizen was charged with assault and refusing to submit to arrest, and while the case was ultimately dropped due to insufficient evidence, Lane felt that the way she was treated at the scene deserved to be addressed as a separate court matter. The case appears to be ongoing, and Lane is seeking a jury trial and an unspecified amount of damages. Number 6. Faulty facial recognition technology. An 18-year-old New Yorker named Usman Bar is accusing Apple's facial recognition system of falsely connecting him to a series of thefts at its stores. As a result of the alleged mix-up, he was arrested at his home in late 2022 with a warrant depicting what he claims was a mugshot of someone else. According to the $1 billion lawsuit Bar filed against Apple, even an NYPD detective acknowledged that surveillance footage of the real suspect looked nothing like the falsely accused young man. Barr's attorney told the Washington Post that his client had lost his interim driver's permit, which didn't have a photo on it, and suggested that the thief may have used it as ID at an Apple store. If this were the case, it would connect the real thief's appearance with Barr's name every time he entered an Apple location. As a result of the confusion, Barr was charged with crimes in Delaware, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and New York. He said he'd never stepped foot in Boston until he was arraigned there on charges relating to an alleged theft at an Apple store. and he was at his senior prom the day the crime occurred, further supporting his allegations against the company of targeting him in a case of mistaken identity. 3 states dropped their cases against Bar, but the situation has caused no shortage of stress and hardship in his life, and unfortunately he still faces charges in New Jersey. His once spotless reputation, which he valued highly and put a lot of effort into maintaining, is now damaged, making it even harder for him to put his life back together after it never should have fallen apart. Apple declined to comment on the matter, but denied allegations that it uses facial recognition technology to identify shoplifters. And while nobody is disputing that the company suffered from a series of thefts, Bar's attorney is confident that the victim card was falsely played against his client. The lawsuit is ongoing. In addition to seeking a $1 billion settlement, Bar wants Apple to acknowledge that it wrongfully and baselessly damaged his reputation. He also wants the company to recognize any mistakes in its stored data that connect him to the real shoplifter. Number 5. Elena Williams. Police in Cumbria, England, found a young woman named Elena Williams bleeding and bruised one day in 2020. She told the officers that she was assaulted and trafficked by a group of men. The next day, Williams posted photos of her injuries to social media, along with an account of the alleged incident, in which she claimed to fall victim to an Asian gang's grooming techniques. Based on her story, authorities arrested a local business owner on suspicion of trafficking. He insisted he had no involvement with Williams and was ultimately cleared of any wrongdoing, but the accusations destroyed his business and his life. The business owner told the court that he's received over 500 death threats from Williams' supporters. After clearing him, police arrested Williams on suspicion of making the entire story up, but the man's nightmare continues as he faces scrutiny in court from the young woman's defense lawyers. Prosecutors claim that Williams' injuries were self-inflicted using a hammer that investigators found her DNA on, but she continues to maintain her innocence. Her story is complex and deep and includes allegations that she was conditioned by the so-called gang over a long period of time. She said that the gang members forced her to go out and party and to do other things she didn't want to do. She even tried to move away and attempted to take her own life in order to escape the gang, with no luck. Williams also claimed that she was engaged to one of the gang members so he could stay in the country, and insisted that the relationship wasn't based on love. She's now facing 8 charges of perverting the course of justice. In court, the jury learned of several incidents where Williams' mother reported her missing and how she was later found with injuries. The defendant described, in horrifying detail, the various forms of torture she supposedly endured each time something like this happened. Her trial is ongoing, and whether the jury believes her side of the story remains to be seen. Number 4. A costly court case. In early 2022, Trevor Bow, a pitcher for the Los Angeles Dodgers, was suspended for 2 full seasons based on allegations that he brutally assaulted a woman. It was the longest non-lifetime suspension ever handed down by the league. The decision came following a months-long investigation, but Bow adamantly maintained his innocence in the case, claiming that he was falsely accused. He vowed to appeal the decision. Bow was never criminally charged in connection with the case. In a statement, the Los Angeles County District Attorney said that a thorough review found that there wasn't enough evidence to prove the allegations beyond a reasonable doubt. This doesn't necessarily prove Bow's innocence, but it cleared him of any criminal wrongdoing. In response to the assault claims, Bow filed a defamation lawsuit against his accuser for allegedly pursuing bogus criminal and civil actions and for making false and malicious statements against him. The suit also alleges that the woman was motivated by a desire for attention. In late 2022, the league reversed its decision to suspend Bow, who by then had missed an entire season. Although he managed to save his career and carried out some effective damage control to his reputation, not everyone believes he's innocent. And even though he was cleared, his accuser insists that her allegations against him are true. But for now, he has the benefit of reasonable doubt, and nobody seems to know what truly happened or didn't happen between the baseball legend and the woman who sounded the alarm on his alleged actions behind closed doors. Number 3. Rebecca Palmer. When Rebecca Palmer hooked up with a young British soldier based in Tidworth in 2015, she found herself wanting a relationship with him. But when he rejected her, she went on a vicious smear campaign against him and his family. Using various fake social media profiles, Palmer made numerous false allegations against the man, including that he abused her and forced himself on her. She also reportedly did things that could potentially affect his credit and his ability to get a mortgage, a credit card, or even a bank account. But the most hurtful consequences for the soldier came in the form of his destroyed career, along with the humiliation and pain that he and his family suffered at the hands of Palmer's vengeful lies. The man initially faced criminal consequences, and even then, Palmer continued with her campaign of torment by accusing him of violating his bail conditions. A law firm finally exposed the truth by tracking Palmer's online activity, proving that the man she made horrific allegations against was actually the victim. She continued to lie to the police, but ultimately pleaded guilty to several crimes, including perverting the course of justice and malicious communications. As a result, Palmer was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Palmer's lawyers appealed her sentence, arguing that 5 years in prison was excessive. They also accused the court of failing to consider the woman's significant mental health history. But 3 judges disagreed and voted to uphold the punishment, giving her no choice but to serve the time behind bars. Number 2. Nadia Amin. After receiving some hateful comments from a viewer who accused her of cheating one day in 2022, popular Call of Duty streamer Nadia Amin revealed the person's full name during a live stream. Under Twitch policy, this is considered doxing and is a major violation of someone's privacy. Amin received a 14-day ban for the violation, but was allowed back on Twitch after less than a day. Many internet users felt she deserved a more severe punishment, especially considering her initial reaction to the ban. In a seemingly confused tweet dripping with sarcastic overtones, she wrote, "Got banned on Twitch for 14 days for sharing personal information," whatever that means. Cool. Amin eventually acknowledged her doxing mistake in an apology video. She said that in hindsight, she wished she'd responded to the hateful comments the way she usually does, by trolling the individual back without revealing any of their personal information. Describing her bad decision as a moment of weakness, Amin said that the ban scared her because it made her realize how much she enjoys streaming on Twitch, and it forced her to entertain the idea of no longer being allowed to do so. While she insisted she wasn't trying to play the victim, this was just the latest in a series of controversies that Amin has landed herself in. Fellow Call of Duty players have repeatedly accused her of cheating, and some even allege that she uses a VPN that matches her to players of lower skill sets to give herself an advantage. Amin denies these and other accusations regarding her integrity as a live streamer, and has said in the past that she's simply a better player than people want to acknowledge. And while there may be some merit to her claims, the doxing incident didn't do her any favors when it came to improving her image. Number 1. Leah Jimo. In 2020, a man from Lancashire, England, received text messages containing photos of his girlfriend gagged and bound, along with a ransom demand for £2,000, $2,407 in exchange for the young woman's safe return. The understandably alarmed boyfriend reported the situation to authorities, who tracked down and questioned his girlfriend, 20-year-old Leah Jimo. It was immediately clear that she hadn't been kidnapped, and she eventually admitted that she faked the ordeal as a plot to get money so she could buy Christmas gifts for her friends and family. In the end, Jimo was charged with blackmail and fraud by false representation. She pleaded guilty to a reduced fraud charge and was sentenced to 34 weeks at a young offenders jail. Lancashire Detective Constable Lisa Carr described Jimo's actions and behavior as bizarre and said that her story fell apart quickly under questioning. Carr said that she hoped the punishment would give the young woman time to reflect on her actions and learn from her mistakes.
Number 8. Joel Greenberg. Joel Greenberg grew up in a wealthy and well-respected family of overachievers from Central Florida, but he seemed to lack the direction and drive that made them successful. After dropping out of college, he started a radio show, but he eventually gave up his dream of becoming a radio broadcaster and started an advertising agency instead. In 2016, he became the Seminole County tax collector. Greenberg's campaign depended largely on corruption allegations against the previous office holder, but ironically, he dove straight into abusing his position. The married father of two met several young women through a sugar daddy dating website and made driver's licenses for several of them. He used the tax collector office credit card for personal purchases, including an autographed Michael Jordan photo. Greenberg spent over $200,000 of the department's money on Bitcoin and used another $90,000 to install a server room at the office to benefit his cryptocurrency activities. Greenberg also created needless job positions with comfortable salaries for his friends. During his re-election campaign in 2019, he mailed a letter containing false misconduct allegations to the school where the opponent running against him worked as a teacher. Authorities traced the letter to Greenberg and subsequently charged him with stalking. The incident sparked a deeper probe into his activities behind the scenes, and he was ultimately charged with dozens of federal crimes including identity theft, child trafficking, violating driver privacy protection laws, unlawful use and production of ID documents, and wire fraud. While out on bond, he violated his travel restrictions and showed up at his in-laws' house uninvited in search of his wife, who was trying to get away from the stress at the couple's home. His mother-in-law called the police and he was taken to jail. Greenberg agreed to cooperate with a federal investigation of his friend, U.S. Representative Matt Gaetz. He took a deal and pleaded guilty to 6 crimes, landing him an 11-year prison sentence. Needless to say, his short-lived career as a public official is over. Number 7. Brenda Gibson. In 2021, auto repair shop owners James and John Dyke from Warren County, Pennsylvania, learned that their accounts with one of their long-term suppliers were overdue. At the time, their books were being handled through a notary business owned by 57-year-old Brenda Gibson. They asked her about the discrepancy, and she allegedly told them to work harder to pay their bills. When the Dyke brothers took a closer look at their accounts, they discovered unauthorized and fraudulent transactions totaling over $135,000, including checks made out to Gibson and her business. Around the same time, Deerfield Township officials reviewed their accounts and payroll, which Gibson also managed, and discovered fraudulent transactions in excess of $300,000, as well as faulty bookkeeping. Gibson was charged with 13 felonies and 3 misdemeanors, but her legal problems were far from over. In early 2022, she was accused of stealing over $400,000 from the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. For a nearly 2-year period starting in 2020, Gibson accepted payments from 714 customers for sales tax, registrations, and titles. However, Gibson failed to forward due fees to the DOT. She was then hit with even more criminal charges and ultimately pleaded guilty to 11 felonies. At her sentencing, her lawyer urged for leniency, claiming that Gibson struggled with a methamphetamine addiction and spiraled out of control after her mother passed away. But the prosecutor pointed out that Gibson adamantly denied drug use until just days before her sentencing and said that her real addiction was stealing money. Gibson apologized to her victims in court and vowed to do what it takes to repay what she stole. But she also said that she didn't mean to harm anyone and that she's done good things within the community, which begged the question of whether she was truly willing to accept accountability for her actions. After all, it's hard to believe that someone could steal more than $800,000 without realizing that they're causing harm. Gibson will have a long time to reflect on her actions while she serves her 4 to 13-year federal prison sentence, and hopefully, she'll have a more realistic take on her behavior by the time she's released. Number 6. Robin Nicetta. While working as a child protective caseworker in Arapahoe County, Colorado in 2022, 40-year-old Robin Nicetta became upset with City Council member Danielle Jurinsky after she verbally slammed her partner, former police chief Vanessa Wilson. The next day, someone anonymously called social services claiming that they saw Jurinsky abusing her 2-year-old son. Authorities found no evidence of wrongdoing on Jurinsky's part and began to suspect that Nicetta somehow orchestrated the false complaint in retaliation for the councilwoman's remarks about Wilson. They traced the call to Nicetta's phone and found other evidence to suggest that she was out for revenge. She was charged with 1 felony count of retaliating against an elected official and a misdemeanor count of false reporting. Following her arrest, Netta resigned from her position. Numerous parents soon came forward with allegations that Netta had wrongfully removed children from their homes. They filed 2 lawsuits against the county, and Jurinsky is suing Netta on her own behalf. So far, Jurinsky's lawyer, Elliot Singer, has filed documents on behalf of at least 40 people as part of a request for a class action lawsuit. Speaking with local station KDVR, Singer said that many of the alleged victims are accusing Netta of trying to take away their kids because they rejected her romantic advances. One woman claims that she was lured to Netta's home, where the caseworker allegedly tried to seduce her. She was unreceptive to the advances and is accusing Netta of trying to permanently remove her child from the home as punishment for saying no. Some of the plaintiffs allege that Netta gave false testimony in court and altered statements to make parents look guilty. If it's true, then it means that her actions went directly against the department's stated goals of strengthening families and ensuring the safety and permanency of the children it serves. The cases are ongoing at the moment, but Netta continues to maintain her innocence. Number 5. Leon Price. In 2020, Kelly Tichenel called the 911 emergency dispatch in Greene County, Pennsylvania, and requested an ambulance for her mother, Diana Kronk. The woman was jaundiced and incoherent. She was also bleeding, and she hadn't gotten out of bed for days. The dispatcher, Leon Price, asked Kelly to make sure Diana didn't refuse services if an ambulance was sent to her location. Kelly wasn't at her mom's house yet, but emphasized the urgency of the medical emergency, stating she's going to die if she doesn't go to the hospital. But regardless, Price told Kelly that she needed to call back once she got to Diana's house to confirm that her mother would accept medical help. However, Diana wasn't in a condition to vocalize her agreement, and Price allegedly never sent an ambulance. Kelly was unable to lift her ailing mother into her car to drive her to a hospital, and she ended up dying the next day from internal bleeding. In 2022, Kelly filed a civil lawsuit against Price as well as the county and 2 other dispatch employees. The complaint alleges that emergency medical services were available when Kelly called 911 and that Price's actions were a direct and/or proximate cause of Diana's death. Price is also facing criminal charges including involuntary manslaughter, reckless endangerment, official oppression, and obstruction of the administration of law or other government function. Number 4. Kelly Simpson. In August 2022, police in Charlotte County, Florida, were tasked with investigating the disappearance of an endangered teenager who stormed out of his family's house after being accused of stealing $100. He left without his phone, medication, or bank card, and he failed to show up at school the next day. Deputies visited a residence in Punta Gorda where the young man was last seen. The people they spoke with confirmed that the teen had been at the house, but said that a woman named Kelly picked him up. The name rang a bell to people who knew the teen. They told investigators that he constantly talked about one of his school teachers, 31-year-old Kelly Simpson, and that he sometimes brought her coffee. Law enforcement went to Simpson's house in Port Charlotte and questioned her about this situation. She allegedly admitted to picking the young man up, but claimed that she dropped him off at a gas station and hadn't seen him since. She initially refused to let the deputies inside to look around, but relented when they told her she could be charged with a crime for refusing to let them search her home. A few moments later, she went inside and sent the teen who'd been hiding in her house outside. He reportedly acknowledged that he had Simpson pick him up and bring him to her house. When he showed her a social media post from the sheriff's office seeking information about his whereabouts, she allegedly told him that they would deal with it the next day. The teen then spent the night at the woman's home. Simpson was charged with interfering with the custody of a minor, and she's on administrative leave from her job pending the outcome of the case. Number 3. Melissa Robertson. As a caseworker for Connecticut's Department of Children and Families, Melissa Robertson's job duties included supervising visits with families who had open cases with the agency. While overseeing a visit between a mother named Kazinia Hall and several of her children at a DCF location one day in 2022, the police arrived to carry out an arrest warrant on Hall. Robertson allegedly rushed Hall and her kids out the back door, leading them into her state-issued vehicle. She then dropped Hall off at an intersection several blocks away. According to a police report, Robertson told Hall not to go back to the area until the police left. She then drove the kids to their foster homes and returned to the building where she was arrested for hindering prosecution. The police who had shown up to her arrest hall were carrying out a warrant that accused her of trafficking one of her children. Robertson knew about the allegations and had been advised by her superiors not to leave the building with Hall. When she did, DCF officials called her repeatedly in an attempt to get her to return. She declined to speak with law enforcement after being taken into custody, and her reasons for helping Hall are still unclear. In addition to facing criminal charges, Robertson was suspended from her job and is under investigation by her employer and the Hartford Police. Number 2. Christmas Tree Controversy. As the 2022 holiday season rolled around, staff members at the Dedham Public Library in Massachusetts decided not to display Christmas trees at its 2 locations out of a concern that it would make people uncomfortable. They also avoided mentioning Christmas or any Christmas-related events on the library's Facebook page, limiting their holiday-related talk to the spirit of giving. The newly implemented policy sparked a furious debate among locals that made national headlines. Some residents felt that it was unfair for the library to shun Christmas decor when it celebrates a variety of other traditions, religions, and cultures. Even one of the library's supervisors, Lisa Desmond, disagreed with the decision, writing in a Facebook post that in her nearly 30-year career, she'd never heard a complaint about the tree making anyone uncomfortable. But not everyone felt that the library's decision was an attack on Christmas. In a scathing, profanity-ridden Facebook post, Dedham's Human Rights Commissioner Diane Lord mockingly referred to the Christian god as a magic sky daddy and called Desmond a selfish B-word. She accused Desmond of endangering people's lives, claiming that the supervisor's complaints led to harassment against community members. Loud went on to call the Christmas tree supporters trash and terrible people, and she accused them of being hateful individuals who claimed to believe in Christ. She also wished great suffering on each and every one of them. Shortly after posting the inflammatory tirade, Loud resigned from her position. Over 100 people attended the monthly Board of Library Trustees meeting to make sure that their views were known. The Christmas tree ban was reversed, and the trees were put on display at both of the library's locations, but the topic remains hotly debated, and it's unclear what the future holds. And at number 1, Linda Mery. In 2015, 40-year-old public servant Linda Mery from Australia allegedly sent $30,000 to the Islamic State terrorist organization, also known as ISIS, and she was arrested for the crime 3 years later in early 2018. She was accused of transferring the funds in 5 separate transactions via Western Union over a 9-month period. At the time of her arrest, officials said that there was no evidence to suggest that Mery was involved in planning a domestic terror attack. The bust came as part of a counter-terrorism sting called Operation Pekin. Federal Police Detective Superintendent Ben McQuillan confirmed that Mery's case was linked to 2 previous arrests that were made as part of the operation, but he declined to give any more information than that. In fact, authorities released very few details in the case to the public. Mery spent nearly 2 years in jail fighting the case and was ultimately acquitted. After her release, she learned that she had lost her job. She filed an unfair dismissal claim against the government, but because there's a 3-week deadline for these types of applications, her claim was thrown out.
Number 10. Justin Williams. Something went terribly wrong between 24-year-old Justin Williams and 22-year-old Deja Johnson, and it ended with Johnson being murdered, dismembered, and stuffed into 2 suitcases, which were kept in her Brooklyn apartment for over a month. Williams lived alongside his girlfriend's decomposing remains in her Cypress Hills apartment, using cleaning supplies and towels to stifle the smell as much as possible. According to detectives, he also left the windows open. Police discovered the carnage when they were called to conduct a welfare check at Johnson's home. Immediately upon entering, officers noticed pools of blood on the floor. It's safe to assume that the smell led them to the location of her body. Surveillance footage showed Johnson entering her apartment after a work shift one night in August of 2022, but she was never seen alive again. The evidence led investigators to one person, Williams. He allegedly waived his Miranda rights and admitted to the murder during questioning. Authorities charged him with murder and concealment of a human corpse. They're accusing him of stabbing the victim 9 times, 5 times to the front of the torso and 4 times to the back. Williams will face life in prison if convicted. Number 9. Ewan Jewett. 40-year-old Julie Minogue was brutally killed with an axe in Milford, Connecticut in 2022. Her teenage son witnessed the horrifying attack and dialed 911 to report it. The young man told police that he was woken up by the sound of his mother screaming. He also thought he overheard her yelling, "You didn't believe me." According to court documents obtained by Fox 61, he came downstairs to find his mom's boyfriend, Ewan Jewett, standing over his mother's body. Jewett was holding an axe and he was covered in blood. The teen ran back upstairs and called the police before jumping out his bedroom window to the ground below. Responding officers found Minogue's lifeless body on the kitchen floor in a pool of blood, and there was a large axe on the stove nearby. In addition to her 17-year-old son, the victim's other child was also in the home at the time. Luckily, they were both physically unharmed and were placed in a family member's care. By then, Jewett had fled the scene. Police tracked him through ring camera footage provided by a neighbor, and his mother also told officers that he called her and told her he had killed his girlfriend. Law enforcement caught up with Jewett in West Haven and charged him with murder. According to an affidavit obtained by People magazine, Minogue feared Jewett would kill her. She'd recently obtained a restraining order against him, writing in the application that she didn't feel she should be subjected to his abuse any longer. And it wasn't Jewett's first encounter with the police either. In 2019, he was arrested for allegedly assaulting Minogue, at which time she was also given a restraining order. Sadly, regardless of the circumstances, her children are without a mother, and her family is left to pick up the pieces and move on. Number 8. Hunter Tatum. In October 2021, 26-year-old Summer Tatum discovered inappropriate text messages between her husband Hunter and another woman. On top of having cerebral palsy and being 6 months pregnant at the time, Summer now faced the additional stress of an argument with her husband that lasted for days in their Prattville, Alabama home. She was ultimately rushed to the hospital with gunshot wounds, but sadly she died from her injuries. Doctors tried to perform a premature delivery of her unborn son, Everett, but he also perished. During questioning, Hunter claimed that he and Summer wrestled over a gun and accidentally caused it to discharge during the struggle. But according to Assistant District Attorney Sarah Speaks, who accused Hunter of shooting his wife in the back of the head twice, the evidence told a much different story. Hunter was subsequently charged with 2 counts of murder. In an impassioned argument in court, Speaks said that Summer was on her knees in front of her husband, and her last words were, "Please don't kill me. Please don't shoot me." Before he stopped speaking with investigators and hired a lawyer, Hunter gave a statement to police that Speaks described as an admission to the cold-blooded murder of his pregnant, disabled wife. Hunter's attorney, Trey Norman, told the Montgomery Advisor that his client didn't admit to killing anyone in cold blood. He said that both Hunter and Summer each owned a gun and that they kept their guns beside their bed. Norman also claimed that the suspect spent days begging Summer to reconcile with him after she discovered that he was sexting with a woman in England. Prosecutors confirmed that Summer owned the .38 caliber revolver that fired the fatal bullet, but they are still confident that Hunter's responsible for her death. Hunter is scheduled to go to trial in June of 2023, which will hopefully bring the case to a long-awaited end for Summer's loved ones. If convicted, he'll face either the death penalty or life in prison. And by all appearances, the prosecution plans to pursue the death penalty full force. Number 7. Aftab Poonawalla. After meeting through a dating app in 2019, Aftab Poonawalla and Shraddha Walker moved in together in the Indian city of Delhi. Their relationship was tumultuous, and the pair argued frequently, especially as Shraddha pressured Aftab to get married. But their loved ones never imagined that things would get as bad as they did in 2022, when Aftab allegedly strangled Shraddha to death during one of their many arguments. He then dismembered her body into at least 35 pieces and bought a refrigerator specifically for storing her remains. Aftab spent the next 16 days disposing of his lover's body parts by dumping them in various locations in a nearby forest in the middle of the night. A few months later, Shraddha's father filed a missing persons report with the police, saying that one of his daughter's friends had become concerned after they were unable to reach her and realized that her phone was turned off. Law enforcement began investigating the young woman's whereabouts, only to discover that Aftab had cleaned the crime scene meticulously and had gone to great efforts to cover his tracks. Even the fridge he used to hold Shraddha's remains contained no trace of blood or other biological evidence. But Aftab eventually admitted to killing Shraddha and said that he burned incense to mask the odor of her decomposing remains. He now faces a murder charge in connection with her death. Speaking with India Today, expert psychologist Dr. Sandeep Vora said that it wouldn't surprise him if there was more than one victim. In Vora's words, Aftab is either a hardened criminal or a full-fledged psychopath who might have done similar acts in the past. He added that an act as horrific as what Aftab did to Shraddha isn't something that a normal person is capable of. For now, investigators have found no evidence that Aftab has victimized others. Hopefully, he'll never get the opportunity to do so. Number 6. Naim Farah. Anyone who's experienced a dysfunctional relationship knows what it's like when an argument drags on all night long and into the early morning hours, but you never expect these squabbles to end in death. That was unfortunately what happened in the case of 19-year-old Naim Farah, who made headlines in 2020 for allegedly killing his girlfriend, 24-year-old Brenda Michaela Gordillo, in Argentina. The pair were in the midst of an explosive disagreement about Brenda possibly being pregnant when they decided to go somewhere more private to hash things out. They went to a vacant apartment owned by Vera's family in Catamarca province, where Vera lost his temper and shoved Brenda, sending her tumbling down a flight of stairs. Unfortunately, this led to her death. The panicked killer wrapped the young woman's body in a blanket and attempted to burn her remains. He then put her body parts into garbage bags and left them in a nearby dumpster. Based on Vera's version of events, it sounded like he didn't mean to kill Brenda, but he clearly took a calculated and gruesome effort to conceal her remains, rather than come forward and admit to the consequences of his actions. Investigators found a piece of his skin under Brenda's nail, indicating that she fought for her life in a struggle against him. This also suggested to authorities that there was more to their fight than him flying off the deep end and shoving her just one time. They concluded that someone asphyxiated Brenda by holding a piece of cloth over her face, proving that her killer experienced more than just a momentary lapse of judgment. Farah is currently serving a life sentence behind bars for killing his girlfriend. Number 5. Britney Wilson. On Christmas Eve 2021, police in Cape Girardeau, Missouri received a 911 call about suspicious activity. Officers responded to the residence and encountered 32-year-old Britney Wilson. She was standing in the front lawn wearing bloody clothing, and she had a sword in her hand. In the bedroom, they found 34-year-old Harrison Stephen Foster dead from multiple stab wounds. Wilson allegedly told the police that she and Foster had used methamphetamine earlier in the day. She also reportedly said that she believed multiple entities were inhabiting her boyfriend's body for several months leading up to the deadly incident. By stabbing him, she truly believed she was freeing him from possession. Wilson also claimed that Foster was harvesting body parts from humans. Her delusions resulted in her stabbing him 3 times before dialing 911. In the end, authorities charged her with first-degree murder and armed criminal action. She's currently being held in jail on a $2 million bond, but she has yet to be sentenced, and the case is ongoing. Number 4. Mitesh Sin Palmer. What started out as a petty disagreement between a farm worker named Mitesh Sin Palmer and his wife Daksha ended in death one day in 2022. Daksha kept calling Mitesh Sin mad, and for some reason it pushed him over the edge. He brutally hacked his wife to death and fled the scene, but law enforcement was quick to catch up with him in a neighboring village. Mitesh Sin allegedly admitted to the crime and described how outraged he was when Daksha kept taking verbal jabs at his mental state. When he could no longer take the alleged insults, he said he attacked her with a sharp-edged weapon. Locals rushed Daksha to the hospital, but sadly she died from her injuries. She suffered severe blood loss from a severed neck artery. Police said it was the second incident that year where a husband hacked his wife to death in the area. In early 2022, a man took an axe to his wife's head and neck during one of their many fights about money. Both men are facing murder charges and are at the mercy of India's notoriously slow criminal justice system, where cases are often known to drag on for years before a conclusion is reached. Number 3. Diana Hembry. In Ohio in 2021, 40-year-old Diana Hembry and her boyfriend, 51-year-old Michael Mudrick, got into an argument over pizza. It ended with Hembry shooting Mudrick in the neck, leaving him paralyzed. Mudrick managed to utter the words, "She shot me," to paramedics, while Hembry initially claimed that the gun fell out of its case and fired when it hit the floor. She changed her story, though, and said that she carried the gun into the bedroom and dropped it, and that it went off accidentally. Authorities charged Hembry with attempted murder and felonious assault. Prosecutors offered to drop the attempted murder charge if she pleaded guilty to the assault charge, and she agreed. In the meantime, Mudrick was put in a nursing home. Unfortunately, he died from his injuries in 2022, leaving behind 6 children and 16 grandkids. Hembry's now facing a mandatory 3-year sentence as part of her plea deal, but her case is ongoing. Number 2. Jason Chen. 22-year-old Jasmine Jazzy Pace's family became concerned when she didn't show up to her family's Thanksgiving dinner in 2022. They filed a missing persons report and shared information about her last known location at her boyfriend Jason Chen's apartment complex in Chattanooga. Jazzy's mom, Katrina Pace, somehow gained entry into the apartment and found her daughter's ID and several of her credit cards. Pace also noticed some cleaning supplies that appeared to be recently purchased. There have been no other signs of Jazzy since her disappearance, except for her abandoned vehicle, which was found on a roadside in the area. She planned to leave Chattanooga for a few days, according to the Dade County Sheriff's Office in Georgia, but based on the evidence, it seems as though she never reached her destination. At some point throughout the course of the investigation, Chen became the top suspect in her disappearance. Authorities eventually came to the conclusion that she was most likely killed, and they charged Chen with murder, saying that they found more evidence in his apartment, pointing towards his possible guilt. For now, they're being tight-lipped regarding the details of what they believe happened to Jazzy. But to charge Chen for murder without a body most likely means they have a strong circumstantial case. Number 1. Nicole Dennison. In 2020, a 29-year-old flight attendant named Nicole Dennison walked into her Tampa area home to find her husband in bed with another woman. She was understandably enraged and allegedly punched her unfaithful partner, leaving him with a black eye. But she didn't stop there. After giving her husband a shiner, Dennison reportedly flew into a blind rage and smashed his guitar, leaving a large hole in the wall. According to an arrest affidavit, responding officers noticed that Dennison displayed signs indicating that she might be under the influence of alcohol. Dennison was charged with misdemeanor domestic battery and was released on her own recognizance. She was also allowed to continue having contact with the victim while the case worked its way through the court system. Would you rather be the only person around to intervene while witnessing what appears to be someone trying to drown their partner, or be stuck camping in the middle of nowhere next door to a complete stranger who seems slightly unhinged? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.